Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Sunday Chats. I have, quite frank, lost count, but I was going to start this one by saying, I promise it's going to be a short one, but I've realised that I do that pretty much every single time, so I'm not going to. But there are two really main topics that I'd like to talk about today. The first of these is an apology, because I have falsely promised something that I'm now realising I won't be able to deliver. And the second of these is sort of a review of the last year, or the last academic year. I've just finished year 13, not year 13, excuse me, about to go into year 13. I've just finished year 12, so I'm recording this, as I usually will, on the Friday. I finished on the Tuesday. Tuesday was my last day. Forgive me, I'm a bit frazzled, I'm a bit all over the place. It's not too late as I'm recording this, but it's hit me as I've hit the go button that I'm a bit tired. So I hope you'll bear with me today all. But, yes, those are the two main things. First of all, an apology, and second of all, sort of a review of how everything's been. So, that being said, let's get right into it. The first thing first, the apology. I want to bet somewhere between a month and a half to 2 months ago now, I made a video that was titled An Idea, where I put forward the idea that I would do monthly videos on historical characters. And I feel quite bad to say this because quite a lot of people gave me actually very interesting suggestions, but I don't think I'm going to be able to do that as a separate thing, at least, because I don't have the time. I know it sounds very silly to say, especially if I'm going into the holiday, but I just think I've been very busy recently, and ultimately, I don't like to say it, but I can at times be a very, not necessarily a lazy person, but a very slow worker, which means that I need to dedicate a fair amount of time to doing the A-levels if I want to do well. And I just don't think that I have the time to dedicate. Hang on, the camera is very wonky today. It feels. I feel like I don't essentially have the spare time to dedicate to a proper, high-effort, researched video every month. That being said, if you're watching this at the time this came out, I hope you enjoyed the short little documentary that was released yesterday. That wasn't really done by me. I was just sort of the actor / voice actor in it. I didn't really have a part in the research or in the script writing. That was all down to Zach. I hope you saw it in the credits. But pardon me. But pardon me for having to stop. I realised I need to quickly do something. But I didn't really have much of a part in that. But I hope that's a little bit of a historical thing. I would potentially be able to talk about like historical figures in the Sunday Chats episodes. That's something I'd still be happy to do, because ultimately I find history quite interesting as a subject. But whether I'll be able to do separate historically researched videos, I'm beginning to realise, and I feel bad to say it, but I just don't think that it's feasible. So I just wanted to come out and publicly say it. I think that the idea of monthly history videos is becoming quite unlikely. Maybe I'll decide to make one or two at some point in the future. Maybe I will get on it, and I'm just being silly right now. But I don't think that's possible. I've got a lot of research to do. I've decided to pick up an EPQ, which I'm going into in year 13, and I've got my history NEA, which is history coursework, to do. So that's already quite a lot of non-assessment based sort of like research tasks I've got to do. I probably want to just focus on those. Yeah, apologies for that, but I just want to say that, get that out of the way. That's thing number one done. Yeah, my bad, gang. But it seems like the idea of historical, like biographies, is not going to work. Now, and I know that this probably won't come out to any surprise. Sorry, won't come as a surprise to any of you. But this next bit's probably going to be a bit unstructured. And the reason for that is because I decided to mainly today just talk about how I've found the last sort of academic year. Okay, so for those of you who don't know, I'm pretty sure I've mentioned this in other videos, but I appreciate that there may be first time watchers. I do, I'm not going to say the school actually, now I think about it, because this is going on the internet, but I do A-level at the same school that I did my GCSEs at, and I do A-level RS, history, and classics, and I used to do English language. I was asked by someone in the comments a few episodes ago to talk about why I dropped English language, so I think I'm going to talk about that as part of a broader discussion about how I found Year 12, my first and penultimate, I suppose, year of sixth form. In a word, fantastic. Honestly, fantastic. It's hard. It's harder than GCSE was. I feel like I'm having to put a lot more effort in, and I understand that for a lot of people, it's a fair bit. I'm not, I'm not one of those people that everything comes to easily. So yes, I've had to put more effort in. But personally, to be honest with everyone here now, I have really enjoyed being able to put subjects that I'm frankly just not interested in behind me. While I understand it's very important, I really respect the people that are interested in it, and it's got like probably much more uses than what I'm interested in day-to-day society. I am by no means a STEM head. Science and maths and all, computing, that sort of thing, it's simply not my cup of tea at all. I'm firmly on the humanities side, if it is sides, and I mean humanities in the broad university level context, so that's including things like English and sort of the like art and things like that, although I'm not very artistic, but that whole, English, history, philosophy, obviously, politics, obviously, that's really where my interests lie. And so the biggest thing that I've loved about sixth form, and it's something that I knew I'd love about sixth form the entire time, is just being able to put all my subjects that I hate behind me. It's the biggest thing I loved moving to GCSE, because it meant I didn't have to do dance anymore. I picked Spanish still, so I did do subjects I hated, but every lesson that I walk into, even if I'm not in the bloody mood, at least I'm going to be learning something that's like very likely to be interesting to me. So that's the big thing. Having free periods has been quite nice as well. I don't utilise them well enough. I mainly dawdle, and that's a me thing, but I have found that they're much more helpful for getting the work done. But at the end of the day, I'm probably mainly talking to people in the same year as me anyway, because I have a feeling that's the demographic of these videos. So, yeah, that's that really. I have little to say on sixth form in general. I think that you're treated a lot more like a actual human being rather than a silly child, which is always quite nice. But at the same time, it's like good that it's only starting now. Like, I wouldn't want to be given this much freedom when I was a year 9, because I would just twat about. But that's all very obvious stuff. That's all stuff that people have, I have no doubt, said numerous times. I feel like everyone sort of says it. So I'm going to go down into the things that are a bit more specific to me. And I think that the main thing I'm going to talk about is just how different my subjects are now. And I appreciate for people that go with me to Trinity this bit, some bits of this are going to be blindingly obvious, but as I found out yesterday when I spoke to someone like at least I think 3 years older than me, who works like at a shop and is just a friend of one of the people I go to school with, There are sort of random non-year 12 people. I don't mean random disrespectfully, just to clarify. If you are watching this, you know who you are. But there are sort of random non-year 12 people that watch this that don't know me that well. So, I'm going to go into it. Yeah, the weirdest thing for me has just been how different what I study now is from what I studied then. Then being GCSE. I didn't do religious studies or classics at GCSE level. And while I did history, all of the subjects are completely different. All of the topics, like all of the eras, are completely different. In GCSE, we studied 2 of our 4 units on the interwar period between World War One and World War Two. We studied Elizabethan England, and we studied sort of public health and medicine all the way from like the medieval era to today. So quite a lot there. But now we're studying modern Britain, which is everything between 1951 to 2007, because apparently history stops in 2007. And I forgot for a second. That's awful of me. Russia, from 1855 to whenever it is that Khrushchev is no longer in power. I actually don't know the year because we haven't got there yet, so sue me. So that's over a much broader period of time. And then we have 20% coursework on the India. I did say I was tired in my defense. The Empire and India. So, very different stuff from what I studied before. Again, religious studies. At our school we made to pick between citizenship and religious studies. I picked religious studies. Picked citizenship at GCSE level. I am now, mainly because of a conversion to Christianity I had 2, maybe 3 years ago now. I think it was just 2, but don't quote me on that. I decided to do RS, and I've loved that. I think I'll talk with. Actually, no. Forget RS for a second. I'm going to stay on history. I think that studying history has been very interesting. We've only just gotten into the India coursework, so I can't comment on that yet. But I have greatly loved both parts of the history that we have studied so far. I've enjoyed studying the modern British history because I think it's very good. First of all, I think it's very good for someone to know a lot about their country and a lot about their country's history. It's quite useful. As someone that's interested in politics, it links quite nicely to politics. And from that perspective, it's quite fun to study. I've got very little to complain about regarding A-level modern British history. The economics is very complicated. Anyone who's in a few years below, who's considering picking history, if your school does modern Britain, don't let it dissuade you, because like most people just get over it. But keep in mind that there's some bloody annoying like economic statistics and things. Actually, now that I think about it, if there is anyone in like, and I appreciate that you might be watching this video maybe a couple of years after it's made, but if there's anyone who's like picking their A-levels who's watching this, drop me a comment and I would happily do a video on like why I picked my A-levels. I mean, I suppose I'll cover it a bit, I'm covering it a bit, but also like how you should pick yours, essentially. I'd happily do something like that. But I think I'll focus more on why I picked mine for now. But yeah, studying modern British history is very interesting because I think you should know about the country you live in. You should know about the country that you should greatly love, as you can tell I do. And actually, I think it also is very similar to the reason why I'm interested in the Russian history. But my mum came from Latvia. She was born in Latvia before the Soviet Union fell, and so was raised sort of by the Soviet education system and all these things, and moved to the United Kingdom, I want to say roughly, this is a big roughly, about 20 years ago. And so that is the main reason why, first of all, I want to know a lot about British history. It's because I was very much, it was very much reinforced to me at an early age. You need to sort of fit in. You need to be as English as you can, which, you know, I'm trying to point in reverse. It's quite difficult to do actually, but I think you can tell what I'm pointing to. As you can tell, I have, I don't know if I've succeeded, but I've definitely tried to seem as English as I can. And that's part of the reason why I was always taught, you know, you must know your country's history, you must know British history, because part of it was for that reason. But, and don't get me wrong, that's not, I mean, I appreciate that it might sound like I wasn't given a choice in the matter. I very much was. I very much chose to sort of go down this path, but there was some encouragement there. However, having a mum who came out of the Soviet Union also made me quite interested in the history of said Soviet Union. And that's mainly through things that she would tell me when I was little about sort of stories from her childhood and that sort of thing. And while I don't intend to live there ever or anything like that, and how I can't even speak the language, Russian or Latvian, I still have an interest in it, and that sort of developed out of that. So when I found out that Russian history was the other part of the history unit, I was actually very pleased, because it's sort of become something I've been relatively, I don't want to say fixated on, but I found it very interesting, at least at the time of picking the A-level. It was like one of the big sort of rabbit holes that I'd gone down. Not very well, I hadn't gone down it very well, but I'd gone down it. So, well, I hadn't gone down it very far, is what I'm supposed to say, I suppose. So, that's sort of the main reason why I picked, not why I picked history. I would have done history anyway, but I'm very happy that those are the bits of history that we study. And so if anyone has any questions about those periods of history, I might not be able to answer it, but, you know, I can give it a shot. So, yeah. Anyway, I'm going to take a quick pause, have a drink, and then probably move on to like RS or something. Right, okay. Now, spoken about what I thought of history, and just to clarify, the reasons for picking it, still, like, it was very much what I thought it would be in terms of, I liked it for the reasons that I picked it, so I wasn't disappointed by history. Actually, I should probably talk a bit about how I found the course, as opposed to why I picked the course. I'm starting to realise, looking at the time, this might not be a short one at all. Though I didn't promise it this time, so you can't hold me to anything. The things I've found about history is that it's one of those ones where you just need to remember a lot of random facts. Like, it's very much almost a pub quizz's A-level. You need to remember a lot of statistics, you need to remember a lot of dates. It's one of those ones where you really can't blag, I don't think. And it is. It definitely deserves the reputation that it's got as a rather difficult A-level. Mind you, it's difficult. But I really would not let, and now I suppose I am talking to people that may be picking their A-levels, I would not let people talking about its difficulty dissuade you. Because people will go on about it and they'll say, oh, A-level history is so hard, you have to remember so much, yada yada yada. There's no such thing as an easy A-level, except business studies and travel and tourism, and to an extent English language. There's no such thing. And if you want to do well, if you want to get a good history grade, if you like history, only pick history if you like history. Don't pick history because it will look good on your CV, is my advice to you. And that's as someone that hasn't finished a course, so take it with a grain of salt. But unless you're passionate about what you're studying, you're not going to remember it. Unless you have some interest in it, or you're just really good at remembering things. For me, it's sort of the genuine interest in the subject that has kept me able to allow me to keep on top, as it were. But I would not say to anyone, oh, history's difficult, don't do it. it's very much, there are challenging parts, but you know, everything's got challenging parts, and a lot of the skills that you learn in history are very helpful no matter where you go. So I give it, as a subject, as someone that's halfway through their course, a thorough endorsement. Now I can actually move on to RS. Religious studies, a bit more obscure. Technically, it's religious studies, philosophy, and ethics. And I love it. I adore it. I don't think that comes as a surprise to anyone who knows me personally. I yap about philosophy very often. People have accused me of being obsessed with it. I'd say that that's a bit of a stretch. I wouldn't say I'm obsessed with it. I hope. But I am very interested in it, because end of the day, it is very useful in terms of like knowing how you are. I think as well, a lot of people accuse me of being a bit deranged for being so interested in philosophy, because it is definitely the stereotype that people that are that interested have something a bit, forgive me, short like hiccuping there, but like they're a bit loopy, essentially, is the stereotype that is mentioned about philosophers. I feel it's in my best interest to argue against such a stereotype. I'm not going to talk too in detail about all the different parts of religious studies, because it's a very broad course and everything ties together very well. But the one thing that I would say about religious studies, this is a lot shorter than the thing for history, but I suppose, religious studies is dying off in a lot of schools anyway, which is a tragedy. It is genuinely tragic that it's dying off, and the reason why is because there's a ridiculous mentality that people have of, oh, I'm not religious, why would I do RS? And I think that very much stems out of, I don't know that much about the religious studies GCSE because I didn't do it, but I get the impression that there is, I know this sounds silly saying that there isn't such a thing for A-level RS, but I get the impression that sort of religious attitudes to things like euthanasia or marriage or even like food laws is like a big part of the course. And yes, it's a big part of the course at A-level as well, but it's more than that. It's not just what would a Catholic say about abortion. It's got much more nuance to it, and it allows you to engage in sort of rational argumentation and debates about like ethics and metaphysics and all these interesting things. And you don't, what I'm trying to get to is, it's not like you only get benefit from it if you are religious. You get plenty of benefit from it, I honestly think. I'm the one of 3 people in my class that is religious, or at least follows a sort of mainstream Abrahamic faith. Like a actual sort of, the views of the other two are a bit, sometimes I find it, one I don't know that well, the other one, the exact details I find hard to pinpoint, but people think that RS is only relevant if you want to become a priest or if you are a religious person, and I would say that that is a ridiculous outlook, because the topics that are covered affect everyone. I said that it wasn't about, oh, what does religious group think about this, what does religious group think about that, but there are still big debates on things such as, for example, we did a big study in euthanasia, which with the sort of bill that's coming through government, which I talked about in my last episode, cheeky plug for myself, that's like an incredibly relevant thing, and it will, actually, to be fair, I really hope it doesn't, please Lord, but chances are, if this gets anywhere near as many views as my other videos do, euthanasia either has or will impact multiple people watching this. So yeah, I hope I don't say that to be too. Oh, it's all. I don't want to be doom and gloom when I say that, but it's true. it's just a fact of life. And then there's things like whether there's the existence of a soul, whether that's sort of like logically provable or not. And it's like, well, yeah, I guess it's easy to just be like, oh, I'm not religious, I don't care. But you know, if a soul's real, you don't not have one just because you're not religious. It's still like something that impacts you. But I understand that there's probably not that big of a belief in souls outside of people that follow sort of religious practices. But the point I'm trying to get to is that the RS course, while yes, it will focus on a specific religion, at Trinity it focuses. I've still got to go to school. It's fine. That's like public knowledge anyway. At my school, it focuses on yikes. I don't know if I should keep that in. I'll keep it in, it's fine. At my school it focuses on Christianity. But, you know, at some schools it focuses on Buddhism, those are more rare, but at my school it focuses on Christianity. Point is, while yes, it focuses on a religion, you don't need to be of that religion to do the A-level. And people that say otherwise are Muppets. I'm sorry, it's that simple. People that think that you need to be religious to study at Muppets. I'm religious. That's why I studied it, but it's not the only reason. Anyone that's interested in debate, anyone that's interested in sort of ethics, anyone that's interested in it's one of those ones where there's obviously the A-level RS course only has so much, but it is one of the easiest pathways you will have into studying philosophy later on. And the amount of variation you have, I'm just going to move the camera again a bit because my chair's falling. The amount of variation that you have in studying philosophy is immense. There's going to be something for everyone there. If you're at all like a debatey person, or you just like sort of thinking about these really weird and abstract ideas, yes, you will probably look like an opium addict to your friends, but that's because they're unenlightened and they can go stuff themselves. So, yeah, I found RS great. I knew I would, because I loved philosophy before getting into RS, but that is my thoughts on RS, how I found it this year, specifically how I find it at school. One of my teachers had a one of my teachers stopped teaching me RS. He also taught me classics. He still does teach me classics, but stops teaching me RS halfway through. I can't be bothered to talk about the details of studying it. Point is, I love the subjects. The main thing for me will always be the subject content itself, because I mean, I probably sound like a bloody nerd, but I'm interested in it, so I'm going to talk about it. I guess that's the main thing I've had to say about RS. I haven't found it too difficult because I knew a fair bit of the stuff, because I researched it, because I don't get invited to many parties, but you know, that's so be it. Now, if you excuse me, I'm going to pause, take another drink break, because I'm rambling, tired, and parched, and I will talk about classics, the sort of unexpected one, the black horse, as it were. Adios. Right, okay, I've got to speed through because I'm 29 minutes in, but classics was an interesting one because I never intended to study it at all. I wanted to study history, RS, and English language, and I'd pick a fourth. I wanted it to be sociology. Then I did sociology, like an open day for it, and it was really, really, really boring. I decided I'd attend the classics session at the open day, and lo and behold, it was actually quite interesting. I did not expect it to all be literature and poetry, and it sort of is. There's a bit of like plays, which is still literature as far as I'm concerned, because if I had to study Macbeth and his spectacles, at GCSE literature, then plays count as literature. Otherwise, up yours, GCSE English, even though I loved you as a subject. Yeah, it's a bit odd because I really expected to drop it within a couple of weeks, and that was that. And I just got hooked immediately. We started with some pretty odd stuff. We started with the love and relationship stuff, which I'm going to let you search that up in your own time. Classical civilization, OCR, love and relationships. That's the unit name that we do, because it's like history and like English literature. There's like a bunch of different units you could do. It's a bit of an odd one. It's a bit of a strange one. It's looking at, like, for example, the poetry of Sappho. Although that's not what we started with. We actually started with the works of Seneca and his letters on love and relationships. But it was a bit of an odd bit to start on. And then we did the Aeneid, which I found fascinating. A lot of people critique the Aeneid for being quite a slow and boring read. Arguably, it's probably not something I'd read recreationally, but to sort of study the themes within it and to analyse it, it's probably not something I'd read much for fun, but to write essays about and to sort of talk about in an academic context, it is surprisingly interesting. And that's probably when I realised that I could have picked literature and been a very happy chappy, but no, that didn't work. And so I ended up picking that instead of sociology, that being classics. And honestly, as someone who is too far in to drop it now, because I do 3 A-levels now, so I'm sort of stuck. I'd blink and I'd SOS blink, but I think they'd catch on. Yeah, I found it very fascinating. It's one of those ones where, so I'm in a class of 2, and I'm essentially given like borderline private tutoring because the class size is so small, and that might change in September because they'll probably merge the 2 classes, which will be unfortunate. I actually have serious reservations about that, which I can talk about in another video if you'd like. Let me know in the comments. It's the first one of those I've done, and we're 32 minutes in. Oh my gosh, we're 32 minutes in. I need to step on it. But yeah, classics was a very odd one. It was basically literature, which I love. Couldn't do literature, clashed with RS. Maybe it wouldn't have clashed with RS if I picked it earlier, because I did the timetables based off of who picked what. But A-level classics is just RS. Literature. English literature. So pick it. And then finally, I should probably talk about English language, which, and I mean no disrespect to any of the teachers or students of English language, kind of sucks. I did it up until Easter. I did 2/3 of English language. It was very boring, and this is the bit where I answered the question that someone had in the comments of why did you drop English language? The course content was very thin on the ground. It felt like the lessons, we would spend a lot of time dawdling and not a lot of time learning, and often be sent to sort of fill in the gaps at home, and I ultimately did not jive with that. It wasn't as interesting as I thought, it wasn't as in-depth as I thought, and I just simply realised it wasn't for me. And I thought to myself, and sort of around Easter time, if I can just drop this and get, not including homework, 4 hours more free periods in my schedule, then I'm going to be having a whale of a time. Don't need 4 A-levels. Not even Oxbridge wants 4 A-levels. Not that I'm going for Oxbridge. So, what's the point? What is the point? I wish I had dropped it earlier, actually, because it was, I actually sort of don't. I wish I dropped it later, because the bit that I was really looking forward to was a unit called Language and Power, which talks about sort of like how it's used in the political sphere and in the media and things like that, it being language. Because English language at A-level is very different. It's about studying how language is used in like a cultural context and that sort of thing, and how language develops, and like, how accents and dialects spread and that sort of thing. And it is interesting, But is it interesting enough to do an A level on? No. And it was always going to be a toss up between English and classics. And so when it came for me to be like, oh, well, I realised one day I've got to drop something, and I'm loving classics, so it's not going to be classics, it's going to be English. And that really was the final thing. That was the final nail in the coffin for English. Not just that it was boring, but that classics was actually really cool. And it is really cool and trendy, and you should pick it, and it's totally will get you employed. There's lots of jobs in understanding why Virgil ended the Aeneid on such a drastic, sort of sudden note with the killing of Turnus. Spoilers for the Aeneid, by the way, even though it's thousands of years old. You had time to read it by now. So, yeah. That's what I thought of English language. I'm going to quickly pause, regain my thoughts, because this is dragging on as a video. Christ. Right, okay. That is a quick summary of how I found most of the things at Trinity. In short, being a sixth form was great generally, in terms of the way it all works. I promise you, anyone that's tired of GCSEs, yes, it's more academic, but it's so much more fun if you study what you want to, which is what I'm blessed enough to do. History, the content is just very important and very interesting. I've got sort of personal links to both sides, so of course I'd be interested in it. RS I've always been obsessed with, well, not always, since I was probably about 14, 15, I was into philosophy, and so of course I'd love that. And then classics, sort of coming in from 4th place and managing to sort of beat English at the last minute, has ended up basically being literature, but with older, fancier sounding names. Grand old time, loved the last year. At least academically, there have been some sort of quite shitty things that have happened in the last 365 days, personally, but I'm not telling that to you currently, so sod off. Academically, sixth form has honestly been wonderful. I give it 10 out of 10 stars. My friends will probably think I'm a lunatic, but I give it 10 out of 10 stars. Genuinely, it's so much better than GCSE. It feels really hard, and it feels really shit at times. But you think back to, like, I just can't help but think back whenever I want to diss A levels to all of the times where I just sat in a science lesson twiddling my thumbs for an hour because I hated the topic, and think, well, okay, at least I'm using my time productively, at least I'm doing what I love. And so yeah, that's sort of been my thoughts on the last year, how things have gone. If you want to know more, comment. You know the routine by now, I hope. Anyone that leaves comments about any topic, I'll answer them. I actually need comments for this sort of channel to work, otherwise I'm rambling into the air, and I'd rather reply to you guys about things. So, yeah, that's how that's been. Now, the main thing I've got to say, really, actually no. Okay, yeah, I'll say it. I'm going to be at a law school for the next week, like a sort of like a summer school type thing. So I'm going to be popping in and out of London every day. My availability in the long term, because obviously, like, maybe you're watching this video at the time it's made, but you're probably not. Chances are you're not. So I guess my availability doesn't really matter, but I guess the main thing I'm going to talk about next week, should you guys want me to, is my experience with the law school and how I'm feeling about studying law. Other than that, we're quickly approaching 40 minutes. Far too quickly. So I want to thank you all. Apologise really strongly for the ramble today, because goodness me, there's been ramble. And just wish you all a bloody good evening. Bye.